Good afternoon. I'm Pat Living with the Department of Health and Social Services and the moderator for the COVID-19 update for Friday, May 22nd. We are joined today by the Yukon Premier, Sandy Silver, Minister of Economic Development, Ranj Pillai, and the Yukon's Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Brendan Hanley. Following our speakers, we will go to the phone line for questions from reporters. We will call you by name, and you will each have one question plus one follow-up. Our French-speaking journalists are encouraged to ask their questions in French. With us today is André Boursier from the French Language Services Directorate to translate those questions for those who do not speak French. Thank you. Premier Silver.
Thank you very much, Pat. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm happy to be here with Dr. Hanley, but also with Minister Ranj Pillai, who's joining us. He has an announcement about a very valuable support program that will be made available to Yukoners very soon. We are now 1 week into our first phase of the path forward. I'm happy to say that we are able to continue moving forward, which is where we really want to be right now. As each phase moves ahead, we are evaluating the impacts. The health of Yukoners is the most important factor in all of these decisions. Since we entered into Phase 1, Yukoners have expanded their bubbles to include another family, and I hope that this has brought some relief to those who are feeling the burdens of these COVID-19 related restrictions. We continue to focus efforts on getting businesses safely back up and running. Today, I'm happy to say that we lifted the closure orders and personal care businesses will be able to open starting May the 27th. Guidelines were sent to operators on Tuesday, and I understand businesses are working on their operational plans. So as of May 27th, personal care businesses with approved operational plans are able to open back up. I know that there are many Yukoners looking forward to getting back to work and offering the wonderful services that their clients have been missing. Along with personal care services, we have also lifted the closure orders for restaurants. As of May 29th, restaurants with approved plans can open. The guidelines for safe restaurant operations will be available today on yukon.ca. If you are developing an operational plan, you can find templates on yukon.ca. Business operational plans will be reviewed within 48 hours of being received. I recognize that in order for Yukoners to return to work, they need safe, accessible options for childcare services. Without childcare, parents cannot get back to work. And in most cases, the ones responsible for childcare are the mothers. There are endless consequences of rebuilding an economy where mothers cannot return to work. Childcare operator guidelines were updated last week and provided to business operators and owners. With these revised guidelines, childcare services can now be open to all Yukon families. This means preschool, daycare, or day home operators can welcome back children who previously attended their centers. The updated guidelines are also posted on yukon.ca if people are looking for more information about the safety precautions that have to be in place. I know that this comes as a relief to parents who have been greatly missing this support. The work that Yukon's early childhood educators, childcare, and day home workers do is incredibly important. These centers are not just somewhere for children to go during the day. They are a place for children to grow, to learn, and to thrive. These people are professionals. Early childhood educators, childcare workers, and all of the people who dedicate themselves to caring for children, creating a support network that is incredibly important for our children and for their families. Their work is valuable, and I have spoken with countless amount of people about how much they rely on this support. I am very pleased that these centers can once again accept children from all families. I also recognize that some families will choose to keep their children at home. Not having all children return could make it difficult for childcare operators because of the loss of revenue. We are continuing to support childcare operators by paying the direct operating grant fully until the end of June. Over the next month, we will continue to work with childcare operators and owners to determine if continued support is still needed. We are committed to supporting this extremely important part of our community. We have taken some early steps on our pathway forward, and there still is quite a ways to go. In the coming days, you will see more information on how campgrounds will open up safely. You will also begin to hear about which recreational organizations and facilities will be operating this summer. Some recreation groups have already identified that they will be going ahead with amended programming, like Tennis Yukon. Others are moving to online platforms, like Softball Yukon's Safe at Home initiative, or the Lynx Basketball Summer Skills Challenge, for example. Yukoners should be extremely proud of the creative, dedicated folks in our communities who are developing great opportunities every day. Now, I understand and appreciate that people are anxiously waiting more news. I had a conversation just yesterday with fellow premiers, and we agreed that we must move in lockstep in order to keep the risk as low as possible. I had a conversation with those folks about our pathway forward as well. So our path forward plan, like the other plans put out by most provinces, identifies that we will move from phase 1 when the risk levels allow. I want to clarify some aspects of our plan today. The first point is that Yukon is on track with the rest of the country in terms of reopening. Far from lagging behind, in many ways, we are ahead of other jurisdictions because of the diligence shown by you, Yukoners. Now, the second issue that is important to recognize is that the plan identifies milestones, but does not identify the dates that these will be met. This is how the majority of Canadian jurisdictions are presenting their plans because the exact timelines of the virus, well, they're unknown. I'll read directly from a national framework document developed by Canada's Chief Medical Officers of Health. Quote, bottom line, a decision to reopen will be based on meeting public health criteria and is not a quote-unquote date, end quote. Let's start with a little bit of comparison of some other jurisdictions in terms of different types of businesses reopening. Here are a few examples. Hardware stores in Ontario, they opened up May the 9th. In Yukon, they were never closed. Garden centers, again, opened in Ontario May 9th. In Yukon, they were never closed. And Yukon Gardens, they opened up in May the 6th. Golf courses is another comparison in Ontario. They opened up in the mid of May on the 16th. And in Alberta on May the 2nd. And here they opened April 30th. Construction projects opened in many jurisdictions. We're seeing those opening in Ontario May the 19th, other jurisdictions this week. In Yukon, again, never closed. Gyms in Alberta are still not open, while here, those who want to be open have done so. Now, these are just a few examples, and as always, there will be, in specific regions, variations. But what Yukoners should know is that we did not shut down as much as other jurisdictions, and we are reopening fast or faster than other places in Canada. With regard to hard dates for each phase of the plan, we are absolutely in sync with what most other places are doing. We began with a hard start date of May the 15th. To begin relaxing restrictions. Moving to the next phase, well, this will happen when the criteria are met. We have a transition period of 2 to 4 weeks, which will be applied to inform Yukoners of this change to allow for preparations. Now, this is very similar to Alberta, who has set no hard dates in moving from one phase to the next. Saskatchewan was similar to us, giving dates for the first 2 phases, but no hard dates past phases 3, 4, or 5. Our neighbors to the east in Northwest Territories, they have set dates for phase 1 and phase 2, but nothing beyond that. I am very aware of the frustrations that business owners have in regarding the specifics, and I think that we are proceeding responsibly in a manner that is similar to our neighbors. We have already seen other places in Canada and abroad that have set hard dates be forced to move backwards. This is obviously something that we want to avoid. I ask you once again for your patience and for your understanding as we continue to move forward through the phases of reopening. Most importantly, I'm asking you please to remain diligent. Keep on washing your hands. Keep 2 meters away from anyone not in your household or in your bubble. Limit your travel to the communities. Stay home if you're sick. Keep your gatherings to 10 or less people. and self-isolate when required. We must all continue to follow these steps, even as we begin to lift the restrictions. And again, Yukoners, thank you very, very much for your efforts. What we're asking you to do is not easy. Please continue to connect with your friends and loved ones, be kind to one another, and remember that we will get through this together. Thank you very much. Minister Pillai.
Thanks, Premier. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, I would like to acknowledge that we're on the traditional territory of the Kwalindun First Nation and the Ton-Gwetchin Council. I'm here today to announce the latest measures government of Yukon is taking to support workers during the COVID-19 pandemic. During the state of emergency, many businesses have closed to the public or made changes to how they interact with customers. For essential services, these options are not always possible. Yukoners employed in essential services have continued to come to work despite the stresses and risk of interacting with the public. It is important to take steps to mitigate this risk, such as adding glass shields to checkout counters or providing workers with personal protective equipment. It is also a priority for our government to provide these workers with financial assistance. The Government of Canada recently announced that they would offer funding to the provinces and territories to implement wage support programs. Today I'm announcing the Yukon Essential Workers Income Support Program. This program will provide essential workers who make less than $20 per hour with a wage top-up. Employees will also be required to agree that they will not receive the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit during the 16-week period in which they are receiving this wage top-up. The program is also going to be complemented by the labour market funding being provided by the Department of Education. $750,000 is available to help employers create new jobs in critical and essential service roles as well for graduating and post-secondary students this summer. This funding will help Yukon graduating and post-secondary students find summer employment, develop their skills in the workplace, and earn income. So we're very happy to be providing this support to Yukoners. Yukon's essential workers have continued to offer the services and goods that we all need in our daily lives. There are many critical sectors that will benefit greatly from this program. These include the grocery store workers who help keep Yukoners supplied and the janitorial workers that help keep us safe. We also have heard concerns from members of our agricultural industry about the ability to hire and retain farm labor. This wage subsidy will help our local food industry members to hire and train workers to ensure a supply of locally grown food. Very exciting aspect to the program. I had the opportunity this morning to be online with agricultural ministers across the country. Every region is finding significant pressure when it comes to labor, and so I appreciate the work of the Department of Education with us to now provide these jobs which normally wouldn't be in place for our students to get out and to experience something different by being able to support our agricultural industry. We have also heard from the forestry-related businesses that use and supply wood products and services. These businesses have been seeing disruptions to their incoming technical and mechanical supplies, including skilled labor, affecting their ability to continue supplying wood products to Yukoners. They are experiencing difficulties with retaining and hiring staff. This wage boost can help these operators hire and retain staff so they can continue to make their important contributions to our economy. I'm glad that we are able to offer them this financial support during this difficult time. This pandemic has had drastic impacts on our society, and it has really brought into focus the importance of essential workers. These are the people on the front line who are doing amazing work to keep our territory running. They are getting goods delivered to stores throughout the territory, keeping shelves stocked with food and supplies that we need, and ensuring our communities stay strong and connected. Those of us who are staying at home can only do so because of these frontline workers who show up to work every day to support their fellow Yukoners. So on behalf of all Yukoners, thank you for all that you do. And with that, I'll pass it on to Dr. Hanley.
Thank you, Minister Pillai. Today marks 2 months since we announced the arrival of COVID-19 in Yukon, and just over a month since we had our last case. We're doing well, but the one thing we have come to learn about COVID-19 over the past 5 months is that we must continue to live with uncertainty and continue our need to make decisions, often bold, sometimes life-altering, in the midst of uncertainty. We're constantly learning and shifting as we find out more and more about how to find and manage this disease, how it spreads, and how we can prevent it from moving through our population, while at the same time identifying and addressing the consequences of our preventative measures. As the world experiences COVID, we are all learning from each other. We know how quickly things can change. We see countries holding on to lockdown for dear life, while other countries, states, or regions are opening in the face of ongoing COVID circulation. Slowly, we are learning about the effectiveness of various measures, their risks and consequences, and where COVID risks are higher or lower. But there is still so much to study and learn and translate into action. All this to say, it is sometimes hard to achieve clarity when it comes to the COVID-19 pandemic. Not only do we need to be continually learning and listening, we must also be humble enough to be ready to shift our advice and direction as we go. According to experience, either here or elsewhere, lessons learned, and the advice of experts, stakeholders, and all of you. Today, however, I will try to provide some clarity on a number of topics people have been asking about. First, personal care services, as the Premier announced just now, can open as of Wednesday, May 27th, as long as they have had their operational plan approved by the Health Emergency Operations Centre. At their request, we provided the personal care guidelines to the operators in advance of the opening announcement to give them time to prepare for reopening. Restaurants, again, as the Premier said, will be able to reopen for in-house dining on May 29th, again contingent on approval of their plans by Environmental Health Services and following new guidelines, which include a reduction in usual seating capacity limited to 50% to allow for physical distancing. I know this is being received with mixed reactions, but this is what we need to do as we start the reopening. Proceed slowly, assess for stability, and move to the next steps when we are confident. A little bit in French. Les soins de service personnel peuvent ouvrir à partir de mercredi 27 mai, tant qu'ils ont fait approuver le plan opérationnel. Les restaurants aussi pourront ouvrir pour servir sur place le 29 mai, sous réserve de l'approbation de leur plan par le service de santé environnementale et conformément aux nouvelles directives, qui incluent une réduction de la capacité habituelle limitée à 50% pour permettre la distance physique. To address a few more items, on the subject of childcare, as the Premier noted, licensed childcare operators can now provide childcare for children of all Yukon families and are no longer limited to providing care for only those children of critical and essential workers and vulnerable families. Childcare operators can return to their pre-COVID-19 enrollment numbers as long as they follow the new guidelines for operation during COVID-19. To ensure this happens, child care services inspectors are working with each operator to determine if and how they can return to their normal licensing capacity. Again, just to repeat that in French. En ce qui concerne les services de garde d'enfants, les exploitants de services de garde peuvent maintenant offrir des services de garde aux enfants de toutes les familles du Yukon et ne se limite plus aux enfants de travailleurs essentiels et des familles vulnérables. Les exploitants de services de garde d'enfants peuvent revenir à leur numéro d'inscription avant COVID-19 tant qu'ils suivent les nouvelles directives de fonctionnement pendant COVID-19. Pour s'assurer que cela se produit, les inspecteurs des services de garde travaillent avec chaque exploitant afin d'évaluer s'ils peuvent revenir à leur capacité normale de délivrance de permis et de déterminer des mesures qui devront être prises pour y arriver. I've talked in the past about unintended consequences of some of the steps we have taken. We were excited to announce the 2-household expansion last week so families could join with another family and not have to physically distance themselves, as long as all participants agreed. We have also modified the requirements for the bubble in those circumstances where 2 individuals are co-parenting and children are moving back and forth between households. Co-parents can choose their extended bubbles separately. A mother can double bubble with another household separate from the father's household. The father can also double bubble with a different household. This needs to be kept tight, though, and honored so that, again, an initial commitment is made and there is no further shifting of household groupings. Of course, we ask all households to agree on this. And finally, we're looking carefully at the guidelines other jurisdictions have created for faith-based gatherings. We will be reaching out to the faith leaders in Yukon to determine if and how we can resurrect church services and other worship services, recognizing the importance of spiritual support during these times and the importance of ceremonies in our lives. I did just want to acknowledge the emails I have been getting about this and want you to know that, as always, I am listening. We do expect to have more on that shortly. And that's all for my update for now. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move now to questions. Chris from CBC.
Hi, good afternoon. I guess this is for either the Premier, well, perhaps both the Premier and Dr. Hanley can speak to this. The Business Advisory Council has written to the government suggesting that the reopening plans and the operational plans that are going to be required are inefficient and burdensome for businesses, and they'd rather see published protocols that businesses can just sort of comply with. I guess why is the government opting for this approach where businesses have to get plans approved as opposed to just setting out the guidelines and enforcing them?
I can start on that. Good question, Chris. I've had this conversation just earlier today with Dr. Hanley, and I've had this conversation as well with Premier Horgan and other premiers. You could go one of different ways where you put the guidelines out there, the policies out there, and then wait for and allow those businesses to open. What we're seeing in BC in a lot of cases is they open and they don't have enough of the requirements done, and then are forced to shut down. We have the opportunity within a really quick turnaround of 48 hours being able to work within these parameters that we set, so that once you're open, you're open. Other than, of course, epidemiology changing. So because we're a small jurisdiction and we have a quick turnaround with our officials, we believe that this is the best way to not only make sure that folks can have models that they can lean upon from our Yukon.ca website, but also have the ability to open as quick as possible and not worry about that there's certain hand washing provisions or cleaning provisions will or will not meet the requirements of the government of the region.
So again, there are kind of 2 different categories. One is for the businesses that are under regulation under the Public Health and Safety Act, the personal care services and the food serving, the restaurants, and these do need to have a plan that is pre-approved, and this is to ensure that. Because they are working under regulation, that all of the measures are in place before they open. Then the other requirement is the requirement from Yukon Workers Compensation Health and Safety Board, and that is to have an operational plan in place within 2 weeks. But of course, these are for businesses that may or may not be already running. It includes all businesses, and it's just to ensure that they have gone through the exercise of assuring that they are operating from a COVID-safe point of view. This does not stop them from operating one day to the next. It's just something that needs to be in place so that should an inspection occur from either environmental health or WCB, that plan can be shown.
Next question, Chris.
Yeah, I guess just as a follow-up to that, I mean, can you talk about, I guess, how this is going to be enforced? I know this has been touched on before, but can you just sort of talk about how it's going to be enforced? Are there going to be extra staff who will be out paying visits to businesses? And also, I guess, what sort of consequences do businesses face if they are not up to snuff?
So good question. So again, through WCB or also through environmental health, we have the public servants available for the inspections. And again, you know, these operational plans, they're absolutely intended to help those businesses consider and identify how to operate safely and how to open up safely. They are only required by specific businesses, as Dr. Hanley just spoke to ensure that they don't go to that considerable effort to open and then just to find out that they may have to change how those plans are operate. Again, as we go out and as a government and work with the businesses, our intent is to be helpful, not hindrance, when we work with them to make sure that they have everything in place to open up safely.
Chris, I think it's also key, just on your question 1 and 2. I mean, as the Premier has identified today, guidance documents are up on yukon.ca. We have that opportunity to give people a chance to go through and think through their business and to think about how they would look at the pillars and the goals that we want to see set for healthy businesses. And now, as of today, in the restaurant industry, they have an opportunity to look at that guidance document and cross-reference that. So, you know, we've been in daily, if not in some cases hourly, contact with members of the Business Advisory Council. I appreciate the Premier's time this week with speaking with the Chair of the Business Advisory Council on a couple of occasions. You know, we're all going through a process here as well as we look to reopen a number of businesses, something that's never been undertaken, to reopen an economy. So we're going to try to make sure we get it right. We probably won't get it right each and every time. And at the same time, I think the private sector as well is trying to get it right. We have some business owners that are doing an extraordinary job of making sure protocols are in place that keep their clients and their staff safe. Some other people need to tighten their game up, and I think Yukoners see that. Our retail sector is busy, but you know, government will pivot and make sure that we learn from each and every move, and we ask the same of the private sector. And I think if we all come together, that's why we're in this together, we're going to get to the right place with our economy.
We'll move now to Claudiane, Radio-Canada.
Oui, en français ou en anglais, savoir un peu plus sur la question des garderies. On est rendu presque au mois de juin. Dans quelle mesure est-ce qu'on est en mesure de pouvoir offrir les centres de garderie, de pouvoir retrouver le personnel nécessaire?
So the question is about daycare. We're already almost in June. Is it possible to explain a bit more what will be required, since these people will have to be able to secure the personnel to be able to reopen and organize their workplace to follow the guidelines?
Oui, je peux répondre à ça. Donc déjà, les officiels du gouvernement étaient en train de travailler avec les personnels en charge des services de garderie. Donc ils sont déjà en train de préparer pour avoir des personnels. Mais on reconnaît que ça va prendre peut-être des jours, des semaines en plus. C'est en progrès et on reconnaît que ça peut pas changer tout de suite, mais c'est une continuation de expansion des services. Au même temps qu'on prévoit que les besoins vont aussi augmenter dans les semaines qui viennent. I just said that it's kind of a work in progress. The Yukon government social service, the childcare officials have already been working with daycare operators, recognizing that this does take time to adapt, but also the needs are going to take time to adapt. So in the weeks to come, then we will see this expansion of capacity. To allow the daycares to take on more children as more people are able to get back to work.
Prochaine question, Claudiane?
Oui, je veux pas me faire un oiseau de malheur, mais je suis juste curieuse de savoir si, advenant l'arrivée d'un nouveau cas, est-ce que tout ce plan de réouverture est mise sur pause ou est-ce qu'on recule? Qu'est-ce qui se passe?
So the question is about what if we get a new case? Are we going to roll back all of these measures? Are we going to just put it on pause? What exactly is going to happen in these cases?
Donc, on a expliqué les critères pour rester en place ou pour reculer selon besoin si les conditions changent. Et si par exemple on a un nouveau cas, ça va pas nécessairement changer le risque. C'est tout basé sur le risque d'importation et le risque de circulation du virus. Donc si on continue de temps en temps d'avoir des cas qui sont bien identifiés, qui sont bien contenus, on anticipe, on voit pas forcément un changement dans le progrès des étapes qu'on va prendre. Mais si on avait une éclosion ou plusieurs cas ou des signes de transmission dans la communauté, c'est là que ça peut faire pause et même la possibilité de reculer sur les conditions.
Premier Silver?
So I'll just add into that too, Claudiane, that the plan document, if you take a look, it's in the front part of it. There's a really good section there of transition, whether we transition forward or backwards. We spoke the other day about this not being a one-way street. Hopefully, we're always going to be advancing, but there are 6 different things that we need to consider, including, of course, the pressures for the medical community, the hospitals, supplies, those types of things. But it's quite well laid out in the plan, 6 different considerations that would then trigger us moving forward or moving backwards.
Thank you. We'll move now to Jane, CBC.
Hi, I have a question about the wage top-up. How can people apply for the essential worker wage top-up?
Thanks, Jane. What we're asking individuals to do, first of all, it's the application process is to be undertaken by the employer. So we would ask the employer to reach out to the Department of Economic Development, ecdev, at gov.yk.ca, or to the general line, and then the process the employer will have to decide which time period they want to deliver this particular top-up. There's a 16-week period that's available, and we've mapped that out from the start of our more of our pandemic sort of response, and it goes right through until till October. So, the employers will take a look at the program and see what's best for them. And there is a bit of funding as well in the program that the employer can use to, I think it's $50 per employee, just to help offset some of the administrative costs that are associated with setting this up. So if they have questions or are looking to inquire to see if this works for them, please reach out to the Department of Economic Development. Thanks.
Next question, Jane.
And Dr. Hanley mentioned one of the guidelines, it sounds like, for restaurants, which is reduced seating to about 50% capacity. But what are some of the other guidelines? Like if people start going to restaurants next week, what would they see? Will servers be coming to the tables, or what are some of those changes? And who can go to restaurants together?
Okay, so the guideline will be posted today, so then you'll be able to see the details, but it really concerns making sure that physical spacing within the restaurant is observed, enhanced cleaning and sanitation measures, asking screening questions so that people who have illness, of course, will be asked not to come in. And the spacing will really be around the household bubble. So that the configuration of the restaurant will need to be to allow for that spacing to be respected. That's the reason, of course, behind the reduced capacity, but also physically assuring that from one table to the next, there is the minimal distance, physical spacing distance observed. But within one table, that can be the members of a household.
Thank you. We'll move now to Gabrielle, Whitehorse Star.
Hi. I'm wondering, just to kind of go back to Claudine's question, perhaps it was answered, in which case I would just ask for it in English, but for businesses with safety precautions in place, it seems that they would be well poised to operate should we see more cases in the territory. So does that mean that even if we do have to walk back relaxations a bit, businesses that have been allowed to reopen will be able to stay open? Or how bad does it have to get before they have to close again?
Okay, well, sure, I'll answer that. So really, it's based on a combination of criteria, but I think really it's continually based on the risk of COVID circulation. So we're not really going to be worried about, and this is, I guess, more or less what I said to Claudine in French. But I'm not going to be worried if we saw further cases, as we have, now over a month ago, but as we have seen these initial 11 cases where they're clearly contained and identified cases, even clusters that are the contact tracing has identified members of the cluster, and all is contained. We have traced it back to an importation. So, but it would be more like if we had a large outbreak, if we had an increased demand on services, on the public health services because of increasing cases, a simultaneous outbreak of something else. If we were to see evidence of community spread of COVID, then these are the measures that would make us either pause or have to go back. Clearly, we're trying to progress in a way that we don't have to do that. That, as the Premier was adding, that we need to try to maintain that enough stability and confidence in our steps, so that we can continue to go forward without having to go backward. But that is always going to be a risk.
Next question, Gabrielle.
Sure. I've heard from some business owners that are a little bit concerned that they will have safety precautions in place and then have asked of their clients, for instance, wearing masks in the establishment perhaps, or respecting the space of staff members. So I'm hearing concerns that there will be some clients who argue against the rules or make things difficult for staff members. And I'm wondering, Dr. Hanley, if you have a recommendation for businesses that are concerned about that.
Well, I think any premise has the right to refuse a customer, and I think that I sense that there is going to be a lot of public support for supporting our local businesses and supporting their efforts to comply. And really, the demands placed on the clients are really quite basic and not very demanding, really. So I do think that those would probably be exceptional cases, and like any, I think there are existing means in most cases for clients to be refused service or asked to turn away if they're not prepared to cooperate with the measures required.
We'll move on to Julien, Aurore Boréal. Julien?
Oui, désolé. Oui, pardon. Ma question est pour Monsieur Hanley. Est-il possible de répéter en français le concept de double bulle pour les familles séparées?
So the question is for Dr. Hanley. Can you repeat and re-explain the concept of the double bubble for the families that are concerned?
Je vais essayer. C'est dans les cas dans les situations coparentales, on a le droit pour un des deux de choisir le double boule, chacun individuellement. Donc, par exemple, la mère peut choisir séparément du père ou un parent séparément de l'autre parent. Donc, comme ça, on a deux choix différents, mais on demande aussi de respecter les... au-delà de l'expansion, de respecter les règles pour continuer avec la même choix. J'espère que c'est assez clair.
Prochaine question, Julien?
Non, pas d'autres questions. Merci beaucoup.
Merci. We'll move to Gord at Yukon News.
Yes, with Alaska being open for business now, I'm just wondering, what does this change for Yukon with regards to travelers transitioning through the territory?
Thanks, Gord. Good question. As Alaska moves forward on their recovery plan, we still have the provisions at our border for safe passage of Yukoners within 24 hours of getting into their region through ours, with again a strict transportation route to the state. Again, this is a big question. Federal borders, international borders with the United States on the federal side, with the Council of the Federation, all the premiers in our conversations with the Deputy Prime Minister and Prime Minister of Canada. As you know, the borders have been extended. The provisions of restrictions have been extended for another 30 days to June the 21st. We also know that British Columbia, Quebec, and Ontario are very much urging the federal government to stay strong with those provisions, as they are still concerned about that transportation, and we'll continue to monitor the situation. But as far as regulations here, our CEMA Act, our Civil Emergency Measures Act, nothing has changed due to Alaska opening up, and we're still allowing that safe passage over to Alaska through our borders.
Next question, Gord.
I'm curious if bars will be allowed to reopen, and if not, what makes a bar different from a restaurant?
Mostly licensing. You have a license as a bar or you have a license as a restaurant. And I think Dr. Hanley was fairly clear last week as to his priority with the restaurants first in phase 1, and then being able to take a look at safe provisions for bars. But I think we're starting with those businesses that have restaurant licenses, and then moving ourselves to the conversation on opening those businesses with bar licenses.
Yeah, and that's exactly right, and it's there are some different risks associated with bars, so we do want to treat them separately. There is more of a tendency to have congregation of people within a bar, and so we want to get the restaurants right first. And make sure that we're again in a stable condition. We've worked out the kinks with that, and then we can tackle bars in a later phase.
Thank you. We'll move now to Tim, CKRW.
Hello, good afternoon. My question is for Dr. Hanley, and kind of piggybacking off of Chris's question here. Concerning the lifting of regulations for restaurants and personal care services, how many plans have you received so far, and how onerous do the plans have to be? If someone just types or writes on a page, I'm going to offer hand sanitizer, does that suffice for a plan?
So the guideline will actually explains what is needed in the plan, and then there are a series of questions to be answered, and then that's actually checked against a checklist, and the checklist has 18 criteria, and so. If there, I think your question was how many have been received. There have been, the last I heard, there were about 15 or so that had already been received and turned around very quickly. So they're actually not very complicated. There is just quite a systematic plan that is required to address spacing, to address screening, how customers are going to be screened, how many are going to be allowed into the premises, how the spacing is going to be organized. So really the questions around these considerations that are going to ensure safe spacing and the enhanced sanitation that's required.
Okay. And
go ahead, Tim.
Okay, thanks. This is either for the Premier or for Dr. Hanley. Just if you could speak again to the self-isolation and people coming in and having to come in for 14 days. There's some concern, again, from the mining industry about, wanting to bring in workers to come into the mines for the summer, and saying that they're ruined, kind of referring to a letter I received that I posted to Twitter yesterday that was quite colorful. What do you say to those miners who, again, where do we get to? Where will we have to get to where this will have to be lifted for the 14-day self-isolation?
So good question. Again, in Yukon and in our neighboring jurisdictions, mining has always been an essential service. So that provision has been made early on in our recovery plans and in our COVID plans. The 14-day isolation is what got us to a place where we don't necessarily just even have a flattened curve, but we have a planked curve. And so what the provisions are in place, they are important to this to us so far, and as we look towards next phases of our plan, that allows us to consider other options, whether it be within essential services that are currently provided, or looking past that into subsequent phases as well, and again with that united approach to the rest of Canada when it comes to our borders and when it comes to our restrictions.
It's a really good question, and I'm really very, very aware of not just miners, but many other sectors who have to undergo this requirement. But it really has been a fundamental premise of enabling us to get to where we are, and equally importantly, of enabling us to be able to do what we're doing now, which is the reopening. So that it's something we're acutely conscious of, that this has huge implications for individuals. We do want to get to a point where we can start to look at easing of the border, as is outlined in the reopening plan. We need to ensure again that we remain in a good place with all of the opening measures that we're undergoing right now.
Thank you, Premier Silver, Minister Pillai, Dr. Hanley. Thank you, everyone, for your time today. The update on Tuesday, May 26, will take place at 2 p.m. and will be a technical briefing on the modeling that has been undertaken to show potential COVID scenarios in the Yukon. Thank you.